I left not knowing my ex was pregnant, but a couple of years later, I got a letter in the mail basically telling me that, well, guess what, you're a dad and your daughter's nearly 18 months old. When I saw Jordan for the first time, it was at the Melbourne Airport, and I looked into her eyes and she looked into my eyes, and it was kind of like, oh, there you are. And it was love at first sight. She moved over because of her mental health, and so she had actually had a suicide attempt. And then just the actual lockdowns, and Jordan, who was an extrovert, really struggled, and I really struggled with all of that. So yeah, it was kind of like a perfect storm of stuff that happened, and the environment that Jordan moved over after a suicide attempt, and it was, yeah, looking back, it's heartbreaking. I walked in the door, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and I didn't knock, and I walked past. I went into her room and I found all the things that she'd written and the stuff that she was hiding. I really wish I had gone in more. If you are worried about your child and you think that you need to have a conversation with them about anything, and you have a capacity to do it now, do it. Like, just do it. Don't wait until next week. Don't wait until tomorrow.
Welcome to Raw with Jay. Today's topic might be a little bit of a heavy listen for many people, and so I just want you to be in the right space to be able to listen to it. So if you're not ready, come back when you are ready, have some time for yourself. We talk about suicide, we talk about mental health, and we talk about grief. This is the story of Jordan, and we have Jordan's father, Jason, here. And so if it brings up anything for you, we've got Lifeline below and we've got Beyond below. These are some of the topics with mental health that I think that we should be talking about, because people don't talk about feelings and emotions, and this is what we want to do, is we want to bring this awareness, because sometimes kids can go through really hard times and parents can go through really hard times and they're just not sure what to do. So we're bringing this conversation to light. And so we welcome Jason, and we're going to talk about Jordan today, and we're always going to have Jordan in our hearts forever. Welcome to Raw with Jay. Okay, and welcome to Raw with Jay. Today we have Jason King, and today we are listening to the story of his daughter Jordan. This is the journey of Jordan, and it might be a bit of a heavy listen for many people, but I do think it's necessary. So I invite Jason. Jason, welcome to Raw with Jay.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Now, Jason, we've had a couple of conversations now, and I've obviously heard your story and your journey, and there's so many different elements to it. So I just want you to take us back to the very start with Jordan, because you're a filmmaker. Have you always been a filmmaker?
Well, I guess in my heart I've always been a storyteller, and I think, truthfully, we're all storytellers, right? We start as kids wanting to try and convince our parents why we don't want to go to bed, why it's not a good idea to go to bed, and kind of, or why we need the extra lollies or whatever the case might be. And I guess nowadays it's why we need to keep the Wi-Fi on, or have the device a bit longer. But yeah, it's something where growing up I had a love of creative storytelling, and I didn't really get into filmmaking until later in life. I'd actually already moved to Broken Hill before, which I did in 2004 at the age of 25. And I didn't really get into filmmaking until around then, or even after.
And what was that moment with your filmmaking? Like, what was that moment where you said, this is what I want my path to be? Well,
I actually moved to Broken Hill to take over Bell's Milk Bar, which is like a 1950s milk bar, Australia's oldest milk bar. And I was doing that, and it was not something that I felt was really what I was here to do. That kind of work just didn't really appeal to me. But along that, I did go to university studying marketing, and always kind of had that side of things. I ended up doing sales and things like that for a while. And it's a good question. I think I just got into it. I got a camera. I did it first, I guess, where I really realised the moment, if I was to pick a moment where I felt like, okay, filmmaking is what I'm here to do, was I signed up for a 48-hour film competition, which you basically get a group together and no one's allowed to get paid, so you have to all be doing it because you really want to be there. And you've got, on Friday night, you get given a genre, a line of dialogue, a character and a prop. And then by Sunday night, literally 48 hours to the minute, you have to come back with a short film. And so I signed up a bunch of people, and we all got together and made this short film. And I was running around the streets of Broken Hill on no sleep trying to make this film, and really started getting like goosebumps all over. And it was like really challenging, really difficult, but it's like that. I was like, why does this feel so good? What is it about this? And I just kind of got bitten by the filmmaking bug, and I made a couple of other 48-hour films, and then progressed to more involved short films. And along the way, along that journey, I realised I definitely love making movies more than milkshakes. And I decided to start. I bought a decent camera. And I started getting paid to make films like documentary content, short documentary content for local businesses. So combining the marketing, and my idea was to combine marketing skills for like to write website content, take photos and do video. But the video side of it just really took off, and I ended up realising that I just loved making the films more, and there was a demand for it. It was something that, and it's really interesting, it's something that sort of came easy to me, but other people valued. And I sort of got into it, and then as part of that journey, I ended up getting into like location management and scouting, and they call it sort of film fixing for larger productions. So I got to work with some of Australia's best filmmakers as well out here in Broken Hill, which has like such a rich film history, and some of the most iconic Australian films made been shot out here. So it's a really amazing vocation to have found. And I suppose when I lost Jordan, it became an obvious way to help process that and help honour her memory.
And you certainly have a gift for it, Jason. I've watched some of your things, and it is amazing. Like you have a real gift there, and I think that that's beautiful to tell that story, because that gives a big insight into you as a human being. And we are here to talk about Jordan, and we do talk about the suicide and mental health and grief today. And so I know that this is a tough subject, but as you and me have discussed, we think it's very necessary to have it with parents and just to help them understand that the things that can happen with our kids. So I just want to go back from the beginning, because as we've discussed, there are so many different layers here, from when Jordan was born to how we got here today. So did you want to just take us back to the beginning of Jordan and when you first met her?
Yeah, and I just also want to, because we're at the start of this as well, and like you said, it can be quite a heavy topic, and mental health and suicide, and it's something that my intention for this conversation and for every conversation that I have around it is to make sure that we're focused on, rather than dwelling on the tragedy and the sadness, which it is, tragic and sad, but we're focused on the positive side of things. So I just want to, if people are listening and they're feeling that wave coming, or maybe they've had some experiences of their own that they're drawing on, I just want to reassure everyone and remind everyone to just take a breath now and just be here with this story and think about how, while it's okay to be sad, that we can actually take something really beautiful and positive from this too.
Yeah, it's Jordan's legacy. It's Jordan's legacy, and that's what we're talking about today is the journey of how, and as you said, it's the best is yet to come, and that's the tagline that we use around Jordan's story. So, and I think it is important, we did a little caveat at the start before coming on here, that, if this isn't a time for somebody to listen, maybe go away and have some deep breaths and, take some time for yourself, and maybe if you're ready, come back. If you're not, that's okay too. But we are here to talk about Jordan's legacy.
Yeah. And I mean, breathing is such a great way. Just taking a few deep breaths, like where the breath out is longer than the breath in, is something that I've discovered as part of my healing journey, and it's amazing how much difference that can make to our nervous systems, just something as simple as that when things get a bit challenging. But
you just said breathe out longer than breathing in. Now, there's many people that have never done any breath work. Like, could you just take us through what that means to you? Like, how many breaths in and how many breaths out?
For me, that's kind of like as a go-to thing. I think it's 4 breaths in, hold it for a bit, and 4 seconds in and 6 seconds out, for example. But if you're really in a state of whatever's going on for you and your emotions are flowing, then you could do it for 2 seconds in and 3 seconds out. And sometimes it's even forgetting, like for me, like just before when I sat down to do this, I didn't even think about the breath in. I just went, and I mean, I've been watching a bit of sports, like I follow a bit of rugby league, and you see after they score a try, all of the players get around in a circle and they'll be doing these group breathing exercises, and it's kind of, it's really cool that it's something like breath work has made it to, and that kind of, the elite levels of
mainstream
men's
now.
sport.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a really great way to start. Is that now somebody listening has got a little tool that if they do find this conversation really challenging, that they can use their breath at any circumstance. So, let's start from the beginning, Jason. I know that you've got a really big journey, and so let's start from the beginning.
Yeah. So I moved to Broken Hill, as I said, in 2004, and to come here for the milk bar. But I was in Alice Springs before that, and I left not knowing my ex was pregnant, but a couple of years later, I got a letter in the mail, basically telling me that, well, guess what, you're a dad, and your daughter's nearly 18 months old. So I saw, like, she'd sent me some photos of Jordan, and I showed my mum, and she actually thought that she'd taken photos of me and sent them back to me. That's how much the resemblance was. So I think I didn't really need any kind of paternity test. The photos were all that I needed to know that Jordan was definitely my daughter. And by that stage, she'd moved to Western Australia. She lived back home to her home state and lived in Perth. And I'd moved and settled in Broken Hill and become pretty entrenched in the community here. So moving over and following her was not an option. But my dad wasn't around all that much as a kid. Like, my parents separated when I was 8, and I really wished that I had a better relationship with him. And my mum, I saw my mum, the struggles my mum went to try and facilitate that relationship. And I think, sometimes that was because she needed a break as well, because she was doing a lot of heavy lifting on her own. But she also, I could just tell that she really wanted us to have a relationship with our dad. And so I promised myself that if ever I found myself in a position where I was to have a child and I wasn't in a relationship with their mum, that I would do my best to be part of their life. So, I knew that nobody would judge me if I just wipe my hands of the situation, because it is a challenging situation to find yourself in. But I decided that the very least I could do was meet this human being who was my daughter, and just see what happens from there. And so I arranged for Jordan and her mum to come over to, we ended up staying at my sister's house in Melbourne. So I drove down to Melbourne, Jordan and her mum came over, and we all kind of met. And I'd actually just started, when I found out about Jordan, just met Dominique, who I ended up marrying, but we'd only just met a few weeks earlier. And so it was a really interesting time. We'd been together for a couple of months before when I met Jordan, and she came down too. And when I saw Jordan for the first time, it was at the Melbourne Airport, and I looked into her eyes and she looked into my eyes, and it was kind of like, oh, there you are. And it was love at first sight, and there was just no way that I would not have had. I knew as soon as I met her, the first moment, there was just no way that I wouldn't have anything to do with her, and I had to do everything I could to be in this child's life. And I've got 2 other beautiful children with Dominique and Tommy and Charlotte, and I was there for both of their births, and that look, that instant, that sort of recognition. I mean, I would like to say, at a soul level, that we get when we see our children enter the world, even as a father, or as a father. That was there, as well. Looking back now, I guess part of my healing, and even before Jordan died, part of the challenge that I faced was that grief for that time, that really important, critical bonding time between the age of birth and 18 or 20 months by the time we met.
Yeah. And I guess it's like a coming home when you see your kids, isn't it, Jason? It's like you're just yeah, you're mine. And what a beautiful moment. And it sounds like that she really recognized part of your soul too. And I think that that's so beautiful to be able to have that moment together. And how hard for you not to know that you're a dad. That must have really been challenging to have that time of separation without you even realizing. That's tough. That's really tough.
Yeah, and especially when they're on the other side of the country too. So stuff that there's all sorts. I mean, I guess I've learned and I'm aware there's so many different situations and so many different families, but it can work. It can work when, I don't know. It's just I actually met Jordan's mum doing door-to-door sales. Selling children's books, and that was a job the sales job I did. So I spent 3 years travelling around Australia. Selling kids' books, telling people how important those early years were. So it was even harder because I knew what we'd both missed out on. And there's no blame in my heart. My heart is open, and I'm here to share Jordan's story with it from a lens of kindness, because I want to support other people, whatever they're going through, to live a more joyful and better life. And hopefully, if people are really struggling, or if their kids are struggling, just support them in their journey to help them get through those difficult temporary times. And so many people have reached out to me to tell me how like it was hard for them, but it's not as hard now. I think that's something we sometimes forget when we're in the middle of that really, really intense, acute psychological pain.
Yeah, and that is the psychological pain. And as you and me have discussed, like, I love that you're, a masculine man that's coming in and talking about feelings and emotions, because quite often men and women, like, let's not be biased here, do bottle up their emotions. And so it's really nice that we're able to have this conversation and you can so openly talk about your story and journey, because that's part one, the part where, you didn't meet Jordan until she was 18 months old. Like, that's just part one of our story, and we've still got so much more to go. And how beautiful that you were able to connect like that. And so what happened from there? So you obviously, her mum's living in Perth, you're living in Broken Hill or Melbourne at the time?
I always lived in Broken Hill for that period.
How did that journey go? Like, how were you able to see her, and when were you able to connect with her? Or
look, it was a really challenging journey over many years, and I ended up going. So I think the next time I brought Jordan and her mum over to Broken Hill. So I went down to Adelaide, picked them up, drove back to Broken Hill, put her mum up in accommodation here, and then tried to start that relationship of spending a bit more time. And, it ended up, because there were no court orders in place, it ended up just basically being whatever her mother wanted, which I found really challenging. And so, but, it was really great to be able to spend that time with Jordan. And like, I didn't think, before I found out about Jordan, didn't think I was ready to be a dad. But actually spending the time with her, I realised I really loved being a dad, and it was such a beautiful thing, and it was really amazing. And it was so hard, obviously, to send her back. But yeah, the early time was really challenging because there weren't any orders in place. And after that, I think I spent a couple of times going over to Western Australia as well to spend time with her. And it just became really hard because there was no certainty around what the time was going to be. And it was a big deal going from Broken Hill over to Western Australia, obviously. And I know that there's a lot of parents who do a great job of being able to work it out. And there's also other parents who, for various different reasons, can't work out. So that's, I suppose, where, we've got a system in place. It's a court system, and it's not always easy to navigate. And that in itself can cause trauma for both parties. But we ended up going down the court road. And so I ended up in the first time round, we ended up in a case conference, and I was able to, we were able to work it out and out of court. And I ended up seeing Jordan before she went to school for a month, 3 times a year. So I was just really lucky that Dominique was so supportive at that time, and she had a good job, and because I had the business, which, wasn't at the time. I was still just really focusing on the milk bar side, and it wasn't always paying amazing, as many small business owners would know, and it's only getting harder for them as well. So I ended up doing that, and that was really great. Like, she went to local kindy here, and really became. I don't know if she really later in life appreciated it, but she was part of our community. She did get to spend really significant and substantial time, I think is the term back then anyway it was, and we did get to spend significant and substantial time together, and we also spoke at scheduled times, like twice a week, on the phone as well. So yeah, that was pretty good.
Yeah, it's hard being separated and being in different countries and trying to build relationship, and there's so many different roadblocks there. So you were able to spend a month at a time like that. That's a good innings, that's a good time to be able to spend together. A month is building that beautiful connection together, even though I'm sure that you would have loved more time during that time. But yeah, sometimes the legalities is really challenging. And so she went to school in Perth?
Yeah, so that time was sort of the preschool time, and I was really grateful for that time as well. Like, I think, and having that month luckily allows you to do the more everyday kind of things. So we did get a bit of time to do that. Yeah. But yeah, when she started school, that changed because it had to revert to school holidays, and I found that really challenging. It was really hard to get an agreement around that too. So we ended up found ourselves back in court again, and because also there was the issue, Jordan was old enough to travel as an unaccompanied minor. And so old enough to, but didn't really want to, and so there was a bit of a a challenging sort of, I guess, time negotiating all of that. But we ended up getting basically to help because of the 3 times versus 4 times, and then if you're talking about outside of school holidays, which we used to try and do when we had the month versus school holidays, it became like so expensive to fly between Broken Hill and Perth, even if you drive to Adelaide for part of it, which is also expensive with your time because it's a 6-hour drive. So I would drive 6 hours, pick her up, fly her mum over, or increasingly her stepdad because her mum ended up having other children as well, and then kind of drive back, and that's like already for a 7-year-old child or 8-year-old child, like a lot. And by the time Jordan ended up moving here, she must have done, I wouldn't even be able to guess at how many. I could work it out, but I haven't got the number. How many flights? 4 times. However many each year, 4 holidays there and back. But yeah, to the point of like, she basically we ended up getting the unaccompanied minor across the line. And the big challenge with that process was because it's something that I think really needs to be addressed in this country is the Western Australia court system in the family court being separate from the rest of Australia. So if I launched, and without going into like specific case details, I guess it was really hard just to have it, it would have been hard either way, I suppose, but, to be able to bring proceedings in Adelaide and then have to go over, get it transferred over to Perth and then travelling over there.
Different legalities and...
Yeah, and it's just ugly and horrible no matter which way you look at it, and even the best of people find themselves really challenged by the necessities and the current reality of going through family court systems. So yeah, my heart goes out to anyone, no matter what side of the fence they're on and no matter what their personal situation is, who finds themselves going through court. And I think for me, going over there, I remember I went over there and it was like a really important part of my journey in that process of just, that layer of onions that we have when these kind of things enter our lives. But for me, I remember going to court and because Tommy he must have been like a baby, like under 12 months old. And I think at that time, and so I remember taking the Thomas the Tank Engine bag to court, and starting to get into things like flower essences, like that emergency essence. Like I hadn't really gotten into the breathing so much at that point, but I was like spraying these bush flowers, emergency essence to try and get myself into a place where I wasn't like bringing so much of the pain that I was feeling for myself and on mine and Jordan's behalf for just the situation, which, let's face it, if one parent's in Perth and the other one's in Broken Hill, it doesn't matter how well they get on, it's hard.
I've separated myself. I understand the complexities and sometimes it's out of your hands as well. But, I honour you for fighting for Jordan. It really sounds like you fought for your time with her. And you mentioned that she moved over to Broken Hill. What age was she then?
She ended up moving over at 15 and a half. So she moved in January of 2020.
And how was she then? Like, what was the reason for her to move? Like, how was her mental health then?
She moved over because of her mental health. And so she had actually had a suicide attempt in Western Australia over there in late 2019 and actually ended up being hospitalised as a result. When she came out, as part of that process of working out how she might be able to begin healing, she came over here in January and she was, there was obviously legal stuff, but, like we still had the court orders, and I think technically when children are under 16, or when they're over 16, like it's basically what their wishes are kind of the number one thing. They can walk, and you can't really do anything about it. As far as I sort of learnt. I just said to her, if you don't want to go back home, you can stay here. And she had expressed that she wanted to move over before the attempt. And so she moved over here after that. And it was a really challenging time for us all because so she moved over, she came to visit in the, January. And then her mum ended up just saying look, I think if that's what you guys want to do, maybe it's a good idea for you to look at, spend some time together and try and sort this out. And so she stayed, but in February, Dominique actually found a lump in her breast and was diagnosed with breast cancer. And then we all know what happened in March 2020, right? The whole world was locked down with COVID. And for Jordan, for all of us, it was really for everyone who's gone through this. I mean, people had different experiences through COVID, I know that, but for us, it was just, even though COVID took a while to sort of make it out to Broken Hill, just that whole thing, all the fear and the uncertainty around everything was really challenging. And then just the actual lockdowns, and Jordan, who was an extrovert, really struggled, and I really struggled with all of that, seeing Dominique as well and trying to look after the kids who were, I think Tommy and Charlotte were 7 and 10. Charlotte was 7 and Tom was 10 at the time when Jordan moved over at 15. And then Dominique would spend long periods in Adelaide because we don't have a lot of the services here to treat cancer, some of the parts of it, like radiation and the initial mastectomy. So that was really, really challenging. And then on top of it, I still had the milk bar, which was either totally shut or as busy as it had ever been with COVID. And, a lot of Bell's actually was one of the businesses. It was in a kind of a sweet spot for the support that was offered and that was available at that time. But I didn't know that when it all kind of was locked down. It wasn't until a month or 6 weeks later or whenever it was when the government actually worked out how they could support us all that this kind of happened. So yeah, it was kind of like a perfect storm of stuff, that happened. And yeah, that was kind of the environment that Jordan moved over after a suicide attempt. And it was, looking back, it's heartbreaking.
What was your coping mechanism down there? Because, that's a lot to process already, Jason. That's so many elements. And as we talked about, layers of an onion, there's so many layers in that. How did you cope during that? Because there's obviously a lot going on during that time.
Look, I really struggled to cope, I'll be perfectly honest. I found it really challenging. There were periods where I heavily self-medicated and to try and cope. And I know that's something that, I'm not judging myself for it now, but it's something that I did do and did for a lot of my life when things got challenging. But I was able to.
And I don't think you're alone there, Jason. I don't think that you're alone in that. These are the methods that we do what we can to cope. Especially COVID. It was a big time, and you've got all these other elements surrounding it.
Yeah, and I mean, I did also. Because of, during some of the times, we did have some really great periods where I was able to, cut right back, particularly the drinking, and I cut that right back and exercise more and lost a bit of weight and started eating healthier and drinking lots of water. And so I was able to also look after myself that way as well. But yeah, it was a rough patch. It was a really rough time. And yeah, looking back now, I regret not paying more attention. Because hindsight's so amazing. We can all look back on things and wish we did things differently. And I was just trying my best. I had a couple of really big projects, and I was really lucky, from a work side of things, to have some projects in the pipeline that I was able to do that weren't necessarily time specific. But then there were periods where it was all at once. Bells would open up, and I was managing that. And luckily, I had a great team, and I didn't have to always work in the business. I'd spent most of my time still doing the video production and working. But then there was because of COVID, we're actually really busy because all these films came to town because they couldn't film in different states or countries. We had films shot out here, TV, and there's Flying Doctors television series was out here. So that was also happening. So the Royal Flying Doctors television series, I was working full-time on that when Dominique was diagnosed. And so she went down. I was still working full-time, helping them set up the locations at the beginning of that when she was diagnosed. And so that whole process was just, there were periods in that were just, really, really full on.
And how was Jordan during those times? Was there any signs or anything that you recognised within her? You've obviously she's just moved over full time. It's COVID, you've got a lot going on. Dominique's just been diagnosed with breast cancer. That's a lot. And was there anything, because at that time we're all just trying to survive during COVID. Nobody had any idea what was going on, or it was a very confusing time for anything. How was Jordan during those moments?
Yeah, I think for all of us, it was like an up and down period. There were moments of, joy and happiness, and there were moments of horror, for want of a better word. And, Jordan being extroverted, like I think one of the challenges looking back, and she was extroverted. So for like my mother, Diane is actually a Myers-Briggs consultant, and so the personality types. So I sort of had I guess like an early understanding of this idea of our unique personality types and how different people interact differently in the world. And but I still forget, and still forgot with Jordan because, extroverted people say the first thing that comes into their mind, and then they think about it later. Whereas introverted people think about things and then they say things. So for me, Jordan would say things, and I would be taking them from my introverted lens of going, oh, what, but then she would just be processing stuff. But I would, and also at times, I was really stressed and maybe I wasn't being as healthy as what I wanted to. And so we end up escalating each other. And I think that was a big feature of that time, her just verbalizing in the best way she could what was going on for her, and me reacting was probably one of the things, is something I remember when I think about the chaos of that time. But then, we also had these great opportunities to be able to get together and one of the things we ended up doing with COVID, we went on this walk at this place called the Sundown Trail, which is like a 1 hour primitive kind of walking track around near Broken Hill. And we would all do that as a family. And it was one of the things that Jordan and the other kids and Dominic and I, we all really enjoyed doing. So yeah, it was kind of, it was a Jekyll and Hyde kind of experience living with Jordan, but she didn't hide.
You had dysregulation and you had regulation, which, she's a teenager. They do have moments of dysregulation and self-regulation. It is tough. It's an emotional roller coaster.
Yeah, and I think, the hardest part was she didn't hide how she was feeling. She did express the challenges that she was facing, and she did actually have mental health support, through that time. She went and saw psychologists, and for the first time in her life, she saw psychologists at 15 and on. And it was hard because I think when things were really challenging for her, they were really tough, but she struggled to articulate it with others, and she struggled to share that in the therapy kind of setting, clinical setting. And I remember she actually asked me to go. Because one of the challenges about living out here, and I'm sure it's like the same, finding the right psychologist or right mental health professional or support can be challenging for everyone. But out here we have such high turnover for staff. So she went through, I think, I would say probably close to half a dozen psychologists in the time between when she arrived here and then 3 years later. A couple of them she actually asked me to go into and say, to help explain how things were for her, because she sort of knew that when she would go to the psychologist, if she got out of bed and she went to the appointment, she was probably often doing heaps better than her worst. And she struggled to really share just how bad it was for her when it was bad. And I think it's a message that I would want to share with others too, because particularly we don't always have the ability to, when we're at our worst, we don't actually want to go get out of bed sometimes, let alone go and talk to someone about what's going on. And that's the challenge, is to take those tools, like something like breathing, and then actually apply it. And I know, when you're a teenager, you don't listen to other people, old people, even if they're in their 20s or whatever, telling you what to do. And so maybe you don't drink the water, maybe you don't put your phone down an hour before bed and actually not check it in the middle of the night or whatever, or maybe you don't eat regularly. And if you're a girl and you're a teenage girl and you're comparing yourself to all of these filtered images you're seeing every day, constantly, you're probably, going to focus on how you look more than how you feel at times, and maybe you're going to go out and you're going to try and deal with all that by writing yourself up on the weekends. Maybe you're going to do drugs because you can't afford $20 or stack up with pre-drinking because you can't afford to drink and you think that's the only way that you can have a good time. And so, when all of these things converge, I think and then you also haven't got the capacity or the mechanism to share that when you really need to. I think that's where it gets really dangerous, and obviously it did for Jordan.
We're not taught these things, Jason. we're not taught how to process emotions. We're not taught what to say when our children come to us and they say, I'm broken. The point is that we're not taught any of these things. You know, when your child comes to you and you just think, oh, they're just having a moment, you know, we're not taught as human beings how to respond to them in a way that they understand. And I think that's why we're having this conversation, is that, you know, she did come to you and say to you, like, I'm not doing so good, and you're not doing so good at the time either. And it's challenging because you don't know what to say. And, you know, she doesn't have that level of support because she's seen so many different psychologists. And, you know, she was hurting at the time, but you're never given a rule book when you become a parent to say, this is how to parent my child, or when my child's going through mental health issues, this is what we need to do. You know, you've had to learn that. You've had to learn that over time of what to say. You know, you've got other children. Can I just ask for parents, you know, that might be going through some of these things, what were the words or the signs that you kind of might have seen, like in hindsight, as you say, looking back? Like, what were some of the words or the signs that you thought, you know, she's really hurting here?
Well, I mean, look, to be fair, she didn't ask us directly for help in the months before she did actually take her own life. I think, in hindsight, looking back at that time, you know, I noticed that, you know, she had become more reactive and less resilient in a way. Like things like, I remember one time, like she was putting the washing out, and I can't even remember what the conversation was or what it was about, but I just remember her like just flipping like you know, about nothing, flipping out about seemingly nothing. And I think stuff like that, you know, looking back was the kind of thing. And she had just started, like, you know, one of the hardest things for me to sit with, and, you know, I have sat with it, and you know, it is a thing, you know, that I'm working on for myself. But like, she had started staying out, you know, and we didn't have all that many rules, but she was 18, you know, but one of the rules that we had at our place was, if you're living here, you come home. You go out, you come home. And she had a couple of times where she would go out and she didn't come home until the next day.
How old was she at this time?
She was 18 and a half, so, you know, an adult.
But still, she's still a child.
Yeah, and like, I didn't really know that until, like, I was away. Like, so, you know, for me, like, I was over in Sydney in the months. I went over to Sydney. I made a short film, which ended up premiering at, like, the Sydney Film Festival, and it was really, I thought, like a really great opportunity for my filmmaking career. And so I was over there, and I didn't realise, and then I came back and Dominic mentioned that it happened, and then we got to talk to her about this. Like, we can see this behaviour is escalating. Like, there's, you know, we're worried about her, and so we agreed to have a yarn with her, and we were going to sit her down, like the weekend that she didn't come home. Like, that was the day we'd planned to sit her down and have a chat about this. And so I think that's probably a big message I would share to people. You know, from a place of love and kindness, if you are worried about your child and you think that you need to have a conversation with them about anything, and you have a capacity to do it now, do it. Like, just do it. Don't wait until next week. Don't wait until tomorrow. Don't put off a difficult conversation with your child about something that's really meaningful to you, that you can have with them and you have the capacity to have with them today.
I think it's really hard for humans to have hard conversations, especially with our kids. And that's what they need most, is they need understanding and validation. And they don't need you to fix their problems. They just want you to sit there and listen and just be like, hey, I'm on your team. I got you. And I think as a counsellor and as a mother, I've learnt that myself as well. Is like, when my kid is having a hard time, I drop everything. And I had not always been that way. You know, I'm a workaholic. I have a big mission, and kids just need to be validated. You know, sometimes like, oh, that could be really hard. Like, that was a really hard situation that you went through, and actually asking them questions of, do you need me to help you, or do you want me to give you advice, or do you want me just to sit and listen? And as human beings, Jason and I, and my situation is definitely nowhere near to the level of yours, but I found that people find emotions and feelings really uncomfortable to talk about. You know, they shy away from them. They'll move away from these uncomfortable conversations. And In your situation, like, you felt it, there was a feeling there where it's uncomfortable to sit down and talk to your kids about things that are happening. And as you just said then, you could have had the conversation there, and would have it changed something? It might not. We will never know. But I'm sure that moment would have been quite uncomfortable for you to be able to have that conversation with her.
Yeah, definitely. There's no doubt it would have been, and I suppose like there's a lot of things there that thoughts that have been going through my mind as you've been talking about this and thinking about that situation in particular. But like I had a backyard cabin, like a home office that I would go out to, and I'd come in maybe 10:30 or 11 or something, like most nights, and I had to walk the back door. Jordan's room was right next to the back door, and I had to walk past her door on the way in. And the amount of times that I would just stop at her door, I don't know how many it was, but I distinctly remember, like, the filmmaker in me thinks about it like a scene in a movie. I walked in the door, I'm sitting there, and I'm like, and I didn't knock, and I walked past. And like you said, we'll never know, but I can say that however hard that conversation might have been, or any of the conversations that I may have had with Jordan, it feels like to me, with the benefit of hindsight, that it would have been a lot easier than the conversations that I'm trying to have. Well, I can't have. I'm talking to her. Spiritually, I think we have a relationship, but it's pretty painful. Like, it's a pretty painful way, and it's a pretty challenging, one-sided at times, conversation. And I think also I'll throw in there too, like, what about the conversations we don't have with ourselves, as parents? Like, what about, Jason, 9, albeit mid-strength, 9 beers on a Friday night is too many. Like, maybe you don't need to have beers, that many beers. And like, so since I lost Jordan, I have been able to have better conversations with myself through not drinking, and like, it's made such a big difference. Like, I didn't expect to make it a permanent change in my life, but I've actually found that, and I used to smoke a bit of weed as well, and that, without doing those two things, like, I found the difference for myself, and the relationship with myself, and not to mention everyone else in my life that's expanded out from that, like, including my children, and navigating separation with Dominique in a co-parenting relationship that's just, the envy of many, I would imagine. Like, we have such a great relationship, and the children are really, thriving as a result. But to be able to recognise that now is something that I think is like a true gift, and to be able, if I can share that with others and it helps other people to make different choices in their lives. And I'm not advocating for anyone or judging anyone who does what, makes whatever choices they do make in their lives. But for me, looking back, having that conversation with myself, having that conversation with Jordan, and even if I was still drinking, like, just knocking on the door and going in and teenagers she liked to protect her space. I understand that. But after she died and I went into her room and I found all the things that she'd written and, the stuff that she was hiding, I really wish I had gone in more. And I was trying to give her space, and I wanted her to move out of home. So she got into university. I wanted to be able to develop the skills to leave home and to develop her own life. But with the benefit of hindsight, I kind of just wish there was a staged approach where there was a medium. But you don't know all these things until after sometimes, and you can't really always. I don't want to blame myself for it. I don't want to judge myself for the decisions I did make. I did the best I could at the time with everything I had, and I'm here now making the best decisions I can today.
You did, Jason, and I think that's the part where you said, being kind to ourselves. I think that's where a lot of it starts. And as a counsellor, I always do say to people, if you wouldn't say something to somebody else, you sure as hell shouldn't be saying it to yourself. Yeah, let's be kind to us first, because the kinder we can be to us, the kinder we can be to everyone around us, including our children, because we're all going to have moments of dysregulation. And I think as a counsellor, it's in the repair. It's in that moment of oh my goodness, my red beast came out. Whoa, that was a big moment. And actually repairing with our kids and going in and saying, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, I had a moment and I took it out on you and I shouldn't have done that. And these are the little moments of connection. As you said, you had this beautiful walk that you would go on, and that was your moment of regulation and connection together. And that's so important that you had that as humans. Like, that was your moment to be able to regulate together. But I think that is, one thing we need to do is put ourselves first, like put ourselves first.
Well, and also I think, like, as much as, if you think about it, like, for that, especially for people who are challenged with their mental health, probably the most critical, like, yes, there are cases, lots of cases where people say bad things to other people and we have to deal with that ourselves, but like often the most critical voice is the one that we constantly, that repetitive, inner critic that we just doesn't relent and we can't get away from. And I think, that if we allow that to continue to be the voice that dominates us, we need to, I guess, find that inner kindness as well. And it's great that you mentioned about the nature too, because that's something that I think's really been helpful for me, is just getting out into nature. And a big part of the helping, of being kind to myself and also helping others to be kind to themselves is, as part of this film project, the Jordan Liberty Project, one of the most surprising parts of it is just how we've been able to, like, just in the process of trying to get people together for that, it's actually turned into something even more in our community. And so we're working on this project called The Peaceful Place for Mental Health, and we're activating our local arboretum, which is a nature-based sort of really small reserve in the middle of town, and it's a place that we're working on a community labyrinth. And we realised, like, there wasn't anywhere for people to go, and some of Jordan's friends asked me, where can we go and think about Jordan, and if we wanted to find if there was a place, what would it be? And it was like, well, actually, let's make one. And so we're making this Peaceful Place for Mental Health, and the first project is a community labyrinth where people are making handmade and decorated ceramic tiles in honour of Jordan and other people in our community that we've lost, and with messages of love and hope and positivity that we can put around the outside of the labyrinth. So it's being kind and that kindness, that self-kindness, and focusing on the opportunities for growth is probably the biggest gift that as well as being the worst thing that's ever happened to me, this has been the biggest gift that I've ever been given.
Yeah.
I just wish that Jordan didn't have to die to receive it,
And I know that her legacy does live on. Like, I know that the Broken Hill community has really come together. Since then, you've got some beautiful videos, and I think, when I see her, it just breaks your heart. Like, it's just, this is why I do what I do with Happy Souls Kids and everything that we do as a counsellor. Like, children have my heart, and knowing what happened to Jordan is really hard, even for us. Jason, she was a beautiful human, and I know that her situation is helping so many, and you speaking out as a dad and as a human, as somebody that has experienced this, I know it helps other people. And I know you're building a documentary now. I know she was born in Alice Springs, and you're going back there and you're asking for donations on your page, and her legacy does live on. But yeah, I think these conversations need to be had. The uncomfortable conversations need to be had, and it's coming together and saying, how can we support and love people that are going through mental health issues? And it's hearing and validating them, and it's just bringing them some ice cream if they need to just sit with them in moments. If they're going out and partying, like, sit down and have those conversations. As we've experienced, I've had a lot of mental health issues in my life too, and even when I separated, I just wanted someone to sit on a couch with me and eat ice cream. And sometimes that connection piece is what's missing. And now there's a lot of conversations about estrangement and things like that I'm having at the moment. And we just need to connect to our children, even if we don't like what they're doing. If they're doing computer games or whatever it might be, like, connect with them so deeply as much as you can. And if they're struggling, believe them, believe what they're saying. And I think it comes back to us as human beings that we need to really speak to people about what's happening inside. It's important that we have somebody to talk to, whether that's a counsellor or a mental health worker or a friend or a family member. It's important for us. And I think the message that you're bringing here, Jason, is so beautiful of, have those hard conversations with your kids, because it's uncomfortable, but they're really necessary. We've run out of time today, but first of all, is there any messages that you want to leave with parents and people going through there? And also, how can we find you and how can we support you on this journey?
Yeah, thanks so much. I mean, the Jordan Liberty Project is kind of the handle, and if you search that up, I'm sure you'll be able to find all the different ways. We've got a website, on social media. Documentary Australia is a really great fundraising platform for people can make a tax-deductible donation. So, it is actually, I don't know when this is going to hit the airwaves, but it's close to tax time now, or it doesn't really matter. I suppose it's always a good time to support this. But in terms of the messages, I suppose, like, I would just say, when we're in the middle of stuff, and whether that's our stuff as a parent or whether it's our stuff as a young person who's struggling or a parent who's struggling, like, it can be really, it can feel like that's all it's ever going to be. And that doesn't always be, it's not always a short experience. Like, it can last for a while. But I think, when we did go through Jordan's stuff, we found a gratitude journal she'd written in, and she'd only filled in one page, and there was a space for quote of the day, which said, and she'd written in, like, the best is yet to come. And at the time, it was like, you can imagine how hard that was to see, that she, just a month or two before she took her own life, that she'd felt that way, or she'd wanted to feel that way. But I'm here to tell you that is true. The best can be yet to come. And I guess my whole purpose now is to help us all find the best for ourselves, and find it in a way where we get to choose to, or we get to find the strength and the skills to stick around and support all those people. And I think, if we can be kind to ourselves and all find a way to be kind to ourselves, then less of us are going to end up down that really dark rabbit hole that mental health can take us. But even if people do, and when inevitably people do, then if we're all kind to ourselves, then we're all going to be better equipped to help each other out.
And I think it's also mentioning that people are going through a lot. You never know what happens behind closed doors, and people are going through big things, and that's where we want to be non-judgmental towards that. I've drank a lot in my life as well, and I was masking my emotions, and I didn't have the tools. I had to learn them. And so that's why we're having these conversations, to help people understand that there is help out there. And if you are going through something big, be kind to you. And, if somebody's acting road rage or whatever it might be, we get so mad with them, and it's like, just understand that person's going through a hard time. It's not about the road rage. It's about something that they've got inside of them. The more compassion and empathy we can have for people, the better.
Yeah. And we've all got an invisible backpack, I say, like we're all carrying, and we all have one. And sometimes we put stuff in ourselves, but we never know. Sometimes other people put stuff in, but we never know who's carrying what. And, we haven't got a chance to talk about it today, but like there were circumstances for Jordan where people might have contributed to the backpack being fuller, not realising that she was at breaking point already. And I think that's a key. And maybe being kind to ourselves is just putting the backpack down for a bit sometimes, which sometimes we forget we can do, but we can.
And seeing the human that's in front of us, and seeing that person that is broken, that's got a lot going on, is just seeing that everyone's just trying their best. They've got a lot happening, especially with these times, just come from a place of love and understanding. And
you can't always tell, right? Like someone like Jordan from the outside, for a lot of people, they would have looked at her and seen her and gone, what's she got to worry about? But she didn't feel that way about herself. And I think, it's, definitely, there's a lot to it all. But I think, just for people to remember if they are struggling, that the world is a better place with each of us here. There's stuff that is here for us all to do. And that there's so much more love I've found too, there's so much more love for us than what we think there is in the world. And that includes how much love we have for ourselves if we choose to look for it. And it's actually been the biggest thing for me. It's probably a good thing to put in here, is like being able to find that love that exists within me already has been such a really important part of my healing journey when things get really big for me.
Yeah, I actually wrote a 21-day self-love program before I separated, and I used my own program when I separated, and I might get that back going up for people to help them understand how to love themselves, because that's a question people are like, well, what do I do? So, that can be a bigger conversation, and maybe another podcast is how can we love ourselves? It's accepting every part of us, the good, the bad, the not so great. We've all got elements to us. It's like the yin and yang, and it's going, well, this is what makes me human, and this is also what makes me really special. Hey, Jason, thanks so much for coming on today and sharing your story. I know that these are really difficult conversations to have, and thank you for all that you're doing in this space of mental health, especially for children, to be able to have conversations like this and help Jordan's legacy live on, and building communities. And I know your documentary is going to come out soon, and it's important to have. So we honor you and appreciate you. We appreciate everything that you're doing. We're going to have links to everything down below. This will come out really soon, like tomorrow. I know.
Great.
So we'll be able to hopefully get some donations through and help you achieve what you need to achieve for Jordan. And our hearts are always with her and with you and your family, all of you, because these situations are not easy. And yeah, she's just such a beautiful human, and yeah, just breaks my heart as a mum. So yeah, I'll put all the links to everything below. Thank you so much for listening today. I know that this is a bit of a hard conversation, but there are support networks like Beyond Blue and Lifeline and Kids Helpline that you can go to, and just take a moment after this podcast to just sit and be with your feelings and journal them down, or sit in nature, as Jason said, and just really feel what's coming up for you. Because we all go through hard times. We all go through times which are really challenging. And the more compassion and love that you have for yourself, the more compassion and love that you can have for other people. Thank you, and that was Raw with Jay. Thanks for being here. If you're a parent, carer, or somebody walking alongside children in this wild world, come visit us at Happy Souls Kids, a platform we created to give kids the tools that we never had, and offer parents the support that we've so often had to figure out alone. Can you imagine kids had the tools that we now have as adults? That's the work that we do. Until next time, keep showing up, keep feeling deeply, and keep finding your way home to yourself. Love, light, and gratitude, Jay.